Hello, Micah. Glad you can make it. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, hello.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Just to kick us off, we did want to take an opportunity just to allow you all to introduce yourselves. For those of you that are tuning in online, this is our final session for Baylor Missions Week as far as our MX sessions and panels and so forth. And what better way to end the week than to hear from our previous Bears on Mission. So I will pass it over to you all just to allow you all to introduce yourself. So just share with others just your name, maybe your classification and major, and what trip did you all serve on in the past? We can start off with Claire.
Hi, my name is Claire. I'm a sophomore. My major is medical humanities on the pre-med track. And I was a participant in this past spring break trip with MSO and Baylor Nursing to Peru.
All right, thank you. And Mike.
Yeah, can y'all hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Micah Stoll. I'm a sophomore on the pre-med track as well. I'm in the USCOL program. And I went with the Honors College to Columbia over spring break.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. With spring break trips, that's also a very interesting topic. So I'm excited to just hear from you all from their perspective as well. But just based off of you all's experience, looking back on your trip and your experience, why do you think God brought you like to your specific team or your specific experience in particular?
Well, I'd actually been to Peru before, and I participated in other mission trips to Guatemala, but not really to Peru. I had some friends who actually became missionaries, and they moved to Cusco, Peru. And so it was just kind of like a calling when I saw MSO. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm an MSO. And I want to go back to Peru. And it was a great way to, practice my Spanish, get to like immerse myself in the culture. And just, even though it was supposed to be a medical trip, it kind of became more like we hung out a lot with the students at the school, which was still really fun. And we got to educate them on like healthy habits and stuff like that. So even though it wasn't the same trip that I signed up for initially, I think it still made a big impact on me. And I was just very happy to be able to be a part of the team, no matter what it turned out to look like.
Cool. I love that flexibility and adaptability. I feel like that's one of the big pieces when it comes to, doing especially missions work. Like I think we can go in, but being open and accepting of that, like things may change and we have to be adaptable to our circumstances, communities, and everything else that kind of comes along with serving abroad. So
it was just funny because even in December or before that, when they were like, guys, we just need to be flexible, like things always change. No one was expecting a pandemic of all things to have to be flexible about. So it was definitely strange, like looking back, back when we all signed up, they're like, you just need to be flexible. And then a pandemic hits and it changes our entire trip.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Micah?
Yeah, for sure. I think Claire hit the nail on the head about the flexibility aspect. Mine was supposed to be a medical trip as well. But we ended up getting to do some work with some of the kids in Colombia, Venezuelan refugees, actually running like a VBS camp for them. And one of the things I think God kind of changed my heart through the trip was like actually going on the trip with some of my friends in the honors college helped cultivate those relationships that I had been lacking and missing and like lacking in investing in those. And so it was great to be able to spend time with the guys and girls that went on the trip and just like cultivate and like invest in those relationships. But like when you go to those places, I've been on mission trips before to like the Dominican Republic and to Canada, but I've never been to South America. It's eye-opening and it's good. And it's important not to like judge those places or have like a savior complex, but the Lord can still really teach you about worldwide ministry and just like how the gospel is global. And it was just great to go.
Awesome. Thank you. I hear you mention a significant piece of that relationship building, which is one of the big things that we focus on as far as missions, both building a relationship with your team, with your faculty and team leaders, as well as with the communities in which you're serving and our partners. So it's very affirming to hear you share just how valuable it was to have those relationship moments.
Well, also Micah and I were freshmen, so it was definitely like, you know, still trying to like meet more people, especially in like the pre-med area, and like not so much in your class. It was definitely like a great way to like build relationships with upperclassmen who like had already gone through what you were going through in your like, you know, Gen Chem and just bio courses. It was really nice to connect with older upperclassmen.
Almost like kind of like some mentorship opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of show you all the ropes. That's awesome. With that in mind, could either one of you just share like one story? I know you all may have multiple, but one story, say 30 seconds to a minute, that really focuses on just one aspect of your missions experience. So that can be a person that you met, or something you learned about God, or just a unique experience that you kind of remember vividly throughout your trip. That you all would share? Because I feel like those stories are some of the things that are really valuable. Like, I think we can talk and share a lot about, like, you know, these are the typical things that you experience, but I think the stories really kind of bring it home. So I'd love to hear either one of you all's stories, or both of you all's stories.
Yeah, so with the whole transition to helping with like teach the children at the school, we were able to, you know, communicate and make some connections with the kids. And I bonded really well with these two little girls, and we ended up having lunch together. Normally the team would eat upstairs all together, and like we would have like our sandwiches, but the little girls, I speak minimal Spanish, but I can hold a conversation, especially with children, because we use the same like vocab words. And so they invited me to eat lunch with them. And so I got to go down to the classroom and have lunch with these two little girls, and they told me about their families. And it was just so much fun because like I got to talk about my family, hear about them, talked about like our favorite foods and what we like to do. It was just really fun because like the language gap, even though it was there, we were able to still communicate well and make a relationship.
Awesome. Thank you, Claire.
That's awesome. For me, I'd say one of the most impactful moments was there was like a lot of great moments about the VBS in and of itself, but I had some really deep conversations with some of the people who are running the VBS in Colombia already. First of all, which is like just a great lesson to learn, like the work is already being done in those countries, and we're just going to like encourage and bring joy and just contribute and like bring a happy heart to serve. But I met this one guy in particular, just like a humble man studying engineering in Colombia, and he helps out with the church and with the VBS. His name's Gary. And we just had some deep conversations in Spanish, and just like learning about their culture and he learning about ours, and like the two worlds kind of colliding and joining in like to serve the Lord was like really inspiring for me, and like a memorable moment. Just like when we were leaving, he started like crying, giving out tears, just like saying goodbye to us. And I was like I'll never forget Gary, and he's still a good friend of mine to this day. But just like the fact that through Christ, the best friendships can be formed.
Absolutely.
So,
I was also in the Dominican Republic during that time as a team leader. So just hearing you all makes me think about a significant memory. And one of them being, we were working with Casas por Cristo. So on the last day, they actually, the community folks there prepared a meal for us. So we shared a meal on the last day. So one, we were not expecting that. And then we were like, no, like we're here for you all. But they were just so honored, grateful, and thankful. And just the aspect of them even sharing what they had with us was just a very special moment. And we shared that meal together. And that was just kind of like the cherry on top of us just connecting with one another. And then, you know, we got to finally reveal the house and dedicate the house. And that in itself was a very emotional moment, because I think each day our relationship grew so much stronger. So you'd be surprised over like 6 to 7 days when you're working together with the same people every day and we're coming back, how deep you can kind of build some strong relationships. So
for sure.
That would be mine. I've heard you, Claire, just kind of share a lot about being very adaptable and so forth. So tell us about what was that like for your specific team? So for those that may not be familiar, for our spring break trips, anything that was specifically in a medical setting, we had to make adaptations because we were just getting information about COVID-19. So at that point, I think we were still in the sense of like, it's similar to a flu, but it's worse than a flu. It's like a really bad flu.
Right.
It was in that phase of like learning and development. So what was that like as far as just adapting your trip?
It was definitely really strange. I think there was a sense of comfort coming from the fact that we had a faculty from Baylor Nursing getting a lot of information from the outside and like sharing that with us to kind of like console us almost, because we were all kind of freaking out. At least I was, just because I was hearing about travel bans and I was like, I just want to get home. Like, I don't want to be stuck anywhere. And so that was very nerve wracking. But having the nursing students, especially, they were very like, kind of mothering towards, especially baby freshman me. I was so scared. And so it was definitely just a matter of like getting information and, hearing all these contradicting things. That was kind of stressful. But I feel like the team itself, like what we did at the OSA house, I feel like it wasn't that much changed once we got there. We still were able to like, give parents like a little class on like what to do with like first aids and stuff like that. And we still were able to like interact with the kids just the same. But when we were coming back, it was definitely strange going back to the airport and like people were wearing masks. Everyone was very like, distant. No one was really like near each other in the lines. Everyone was washing their hands like 24/7. So it was definitely just like more of an outside thing. Whenever we would leave like the OSA house or the hotel, we would start noticing certain things, but Lima itself was functioning as normal while we were there. So it was hard to like separate reality from like what we were seeing in Lima, because no one was really, panicked there when we were, in the city. And then coming back, it was like, wait, this is actually happening. So it was definitely strange because we were kind of separated, but also still hearing feedback and like stuff from like our friends in the States. So it was a little surreal, honestly, more than anything. But we still were able to just like adapt our like itinerary around like social distancing and stuff like that. Like we weren't at OSA every single day because there wasn't really any reason for us to be teaching the same lessons over and over to the same kids. So we were able to do other things. We went on like little excursions to kind of pass the time. So it was fun, but definitely not the same medical trip that had occurred the year before.
Awesome. What about you, Micah? Did you have any thoughts? Because you were spring break as well, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. A lot of the same stuff that Claire had just said, but it was crazy. Maybe I heard like the words coronavirus or the mention of like COVID like 2 or 3 times before going on the trip. And then we went on the trip and like the whole thing started exploding just like all over the world. And we like tuned into a couple Zooms. We had a MD on the trip with us who was doing like a separate clinic. Like we were doing a VBS and he was doing the clinic that we would have been doing. And we tuned into that and just learned about like this new like novel coronavirus thing, what's going to happen. Borders started shutting down, kind of like a similar scenario. We like, me and some of my buddies joked like maybe we'll just have to buy like some motorcycles and bike up from Colombia all the way up to the US because we didn't know if any of the borders were going to be closed. But yeah, in Colombia it was pretty chill, and I think there was like 2 cases when we were in Colombia, so it really hadn't taken off yet. The hardest part was like, yeah, when we got in the airport, like everyone was wearing masks. And at that time, it was just this new and kind of weird idea for everyone to be wearing it. And so just walking around was kind of like, who am I supposed to shake hands with? Who am I supposed to like avoid? Just like this awkward scenario. And getting back on campus, it was like the whole campus was deserted. It was just like a desert land. It was insane, just walking straight through campus and no one was here. And yeah, it was just crazy. And actually, this is a funny little anecdote of mine. I had a fever on the plane, like the plane flight back from Colombia to the US, and I was scared they were going to test me for COVID. And the whole ride back to Waco from Houston is where we landed. I was like feeling pretty bad. And I told the trip advisor that I was feeling bad, and he was like, all right, like he didn't know what to do. Got back, still felt bad for two-ish days. And then I like used this app to take a survey to see what might align with my symptoms. And it looked like it was strep throat. So that was relieving. But I went to the e-care, filled out these forms. And I was like, yeah, I think I might have strep throat. The guy's like, all right. And then he's like, oh, wait, first let me give you this form. We're supposed to hand it out to people because like the whole COVID craze. And he's like, have you been out of the country in the past 14 days? And I was like, yeah, I just came back from Colombia. And he's like, have you had a fever in the past 14 days? And I was like, I just had a fever like 2 nights ago. And so he like immediately puts on like masks and gloves and like basically just like all the PPE and moves me over to the emergency side. And like, you know, when the doctors come out and call your name, like the nurses come out. Well, I heard my name called. I look up and this nurse is like fully decked out, fully clad in like a hazmat suit and like a face shield, a mask, gloves. And I was like, whoa. So it was definitely like, it was almost like a culture shock coming back. So like all of the craziness, but they tested me for strep and I had strep. So after that, the main doctor came in and he was just very chill. He was like, well, you don't have it. So now that we know what it is, we'll be fine.
That's really funny.
So,
I was so scared to get screened. I was scared they were going to take my temperature too, because I was having a really bad allergy attack and I was having a headache that was pounding. So I like looked bad when I was coming back into the States. We like arrived at Dallas airport and it was like also very, very early in the morning. So I was groggy. I like looked terrible. I felt terrible. And I was like smiling when they were like checking my passport. I was like, hi. It's like, please don't take my picture. Oh my goodness. But thank God we all got through and we made it back. That was very nerve-wracking though.
I was going to say, that was going to be one of my questions I wanted to hear from you all. And it sounds like you all have kind of already touched on it for this year, which is expected. Was there any moment where you felt very burdened about anything that you saw or experienced on your trip? And I feel like for you all were the novel COVID theme. So I think, myself as well, just it definitely felt kind of how you all were saying, like that week. Like I remember going, and then like by the time we came back, it was like so much had happened in just a matter of a week as far as advancement of knowledge, information, like expectations for PPE, travel restrictions, and so forth. So everything it was like the flick of a switch.
Literally.
Almost overnight, it felt like. But was there anything beyond that you all felt burdened by, anything that you saw or experienced that maybe you didn't expect?
Honestly, I wasn't really expecting to do house visits when we first got to OSA. And then slowly they were like talking about us going to people's homes in Coique. And I wasn't like the first one to jump on that, mainly just because like I've been on mission trips before. We've gone and like done house visits. And so I was like, oh, okay, like other people can do it. Like I've already been impacted by like something like this. And then on the last day, they're like, oh, Claire, like you haven't gone. Do you want to go? Like everyone else is gone. So I was like, okay. And I don't think I was expecting to still feel the same impact again, even after doing other house trips like in Guatemala or anything like that. I was like, oh, I've done this before. I'm not going to be emotionally impacted as like the same. No, every single time, any like experience is somehow unique and still so impactful. And I don't think I was ready for that, because we were climbing up like hills, like mountainsides to try to get to these houses. And I'm like just tired and I'm like not really thinking. And then like you walk into these houses and you just get so emotionally impacted by these families and their gratitude for what you're doing. And it's just, it hits you so powerfully. And I don't think I was really ready for that, especially like towards the latter end of the trip. I was like, oh, I've already been emotionally impacted by this. Like, we're going to be fine. And then like walking down the hillside in the mountain, it was like, just like so hard not to just like break down and cry because of like how appreciative these people were just for us, like bringing them like flour and something like that like if I wanted, I would just run to HEB like down LaSalle and like get that. Like, it's totally different. And there's just such a shock that comes with it. And I don't think I was like personally ready for that, even though I'd already kind of put up my guard. I was like, oh, I'm fine. But yeah, that was definitely house visits were my big awakening moment on the trip.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Micah?
I say for me,
The BSB connection's never that great.
We got the BSB. We'll give them a
Let me
couple
just-
seconds.
Yeah.
here, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You cut out just a little bit, so just start.
All right, yeah. I'll start over. Just let me know. I'll try to keep an eye on it. We worked with like refugee families, so we got to see a lot of children who were burdened by their family situation, socioeconomic position, and just like the fact that they're kind of outcast in this land that kind of wants them but kind of doesn't. And so like we could see that very tangibly in the VBS system that we were doing with like the children that were there. I saw like a bunch of the kids that were in my group, like there would be some who were evidently like filled with joy and happiness, but there would be some kids who like sat out during the game portion or like didn't contribute much to the discussions or just didn't even have a smile on their face. Like they'd show up pretty sad. And that was like pretty burdensome to watch, just like to feel the suffering and the pain, and maybe their family situation hasn't been the best, or like the parents are going through a tough time. That was just like, it's pretty raw to see that, like to actually see what being a refugee actually is like. So that was like pretty burdening, but it was one thing that was really cool. It was to see how those kids would show up on Monday with a frown on their face, but by Friday, like by the end of the week, they'd be like participating, and they really felt like it was a safe place where they could enjoy time with friends and also just like trust that we'll guard their hearts well.
That's awesome. And I think I think that piece isn't always awesome, but I think the fact that we have to recognize, especially when we go on trips, that everything isn't flowers and roses all the time. Like that's not the case. I think there's definitely needs across the world, and there are definitely people in communities that are hurting and healing or hungry and in need of support and resources and love. And that's why we do this work. So I think that's always important for us to share with future bears that go on mission. Because I think even when we think about, I'm in the marketing side. So when we think about like some of those like pictures and moments and experiences that we share, I think we try to be very intentional to respect the dignity of others and those that we serve. So sometimes like the pictures look fun, but like you don't always see some of the other things because those may be things that we're not necessarily seeking to share. But those are things that you see and you experience on these type of experiences. That's part of the full experience. So thank you all for sharing that. And pretty much we're about to wrap up our time today. I did want to give you all the opportunity to just share if there was one thing that you could share and tell to future bears on mission that are considering mission or to consider serving. What would be one recommendation or like just words of wisdom that you would share with them as a past mission participant?
I would emphasize the idea of having an open mind, because I was like, oh, I'm so open-minded. But then like even the smallest changes were just kind of like starting to build, especially on something that was like just so always like changing, with this mission trip being like right at the peak of the start of the pandemic. So I think I had gone in thinking I'm flexible, I'm open-minded, but then just like each little thing started to build. And I think the importance of continuing that like ideology of just like going with it, like you're there not for yourself, you're there to serve, that idea and that like thought process, the mentality, there we go, that's the word, the mentality of keeping that all throughout the week, not just at the beginning or when you're like, flying over to wherever you're serving. You need to like maintain that all throughout, because I think just the whole week builds, and maintaining that mentality is so crucial.
For sure. And I'd add on to that and say that I would encourage people to go intentionally with a spirit of humility. And like as Christ calls us in Matthew 28 to like go therefore among the nations, like let's go out there and let's serve, but realize that you going to like over a state to like New Mexico and going on a mission trip and serving people there, realize like have the same spirit of like a servant's heart and of humility to where you still value the people in New Mexico or in like Washington D.C. or in Peru or in like the Dominican Republic the same. Like just because people may be living a more impoverished life doesn't mean that they are worth less or that like you're above them. So like go with a spirit of humility to really learn what it means to be humble and like forget about your pride, because that's something that I learned each time I go on a mission trip. It's just like, wow, like I went to go teach them, but they taught me more than I could ever teach them.
That's awesome. That's that reciprocity. That's what we talk about when we talk about going on mission. It's absolutely something. It's an experience and some learning that all of our Baylor students receive and experience when they go on a trip. So it's definitely not a transactional or a one-way transactional experience. Because there's just so much that we learn about ourselves, about our faith, about our academic disciplines, our vocation and calling, like all these things that really get to come together. So it's been pretty affirming to just hear and see you all and kind of live life as a blast from the past. I guess it's almost like a flashback Friday now as we kind of figure out what things are going to look like within this upcoming year. But just thank you all so much for sharing. I would also just add and emphasize the aspect of like, being humble and understanding that, Claire, as you said, it's not about you. And even think about some of the things, this is not a vacation. I want to make that very clear. So we think about mission trips. I remember in the DR, my big thing of privilege was cold showers. After a long day, I mean, we were working and I was like, it's all good. We put in the work and got a little dirty. It's all good. I'm gonna go home and take a hot shower. And I was like, no. But again, I think it makes you appreciate the little things in the world that you do not even think about. And I think just that in itself is a very humbling experience. It makes you just so much more grateful and appreciative for everything that we have here. And I think that's, just one of the pieces that we really want our Bears on mission to receive. But thank you all for joining us. And until next time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great day and have a great weekend.
Bye.
All right.